Today you're going to be learning about the 2-meal day and why I believe it is the most effective method of intermittent fasting. Not only that, you can learn who it's for, who should definitely do it, who should definitely not do it, how it compares to other methods of intermittent fasting, and why it's my recommended method of intermittent fasting to most people. I'm Max Lowery. I'm an author, personal trainer, fat loss expert, and the creator of the 2-meal day. No, it is not Mark Sisson. I wrote the book in 2017.
Aw, he copied me.
But they say that imitation is the most sincere form of flattery, so thank you very much for that, Mark. So I've been practicing intermittent fasting since 2012. I developed the 2-meal day in around 2015. So I've been doing it for a very long time, consistently. And not only that, I've been teaching other people how to incorporate it and get a sustainable long-term fat loss. So I'm in a fairly unique position to be able to comment on the 2-meal day and also compare it to lots of different methods of intermittent fasting. I'm going to give a really brief overview of a few different concepts today. If you want to go into more detail about intermittent fasting, if you want to learn everything you need to know about it, then check out my free intermittent fasting short course. You can click that button below. Whilst you're clicking buttons, if you do want to learn how to create long-term sustainable fat loss, click subscribe and I will be releasing a lot more videos over the coming weeks. So just in case you're brand new to fasting, let me very briefly describe and explain what it is. But essentially, it's nothing new. Every ancient culture and religion has used fasting in some way for thousands of years. Christianity has Lent. In Islam, they have Ramadan. It was mostly used for spiritual and healing purposes. It wasn't necessarily used as a fat loss tool. Recently, intermittent fasting has become popular, and essentially it's the modern take on ancient practices. And there's also been quite a lot of research in the last 100 years. All fasting means is not eating. So you're basically breaking your day or your week into periods of eating and not eating, instead of waking up and eating regularly throughout the day. There are now many different methods of intermittent fasting. I'm going to very briefly describe a few of them. So a really popular one is the 5-2 by Dr. Michael Mosley, where essentially you eat normally for 5 days, then on 2 days you reduce your calories to either 500 or 600. I technically don't really see how that is fasting. That's just an extreme form of calorie restriction. Then we have the eat, stop, eat, where essentially you eat normally for 24 hours, fast for 24 hours, and then repeat. This is where a lot of the initial research was done. It's also known as alternate day fasting. You then have the fasting mimicking diet, where you're essentially eating specific foods that can mimic, hence the name, the process of fasting. So you can get some of the benefits of fasting without having to fast.
You what?
I'm in two minds about that, but it seems that there might be some medicinal uses for that. And then we have the most popular method of intermittent fasting, the 16-8. And really, the 2-meal day and the 16-8 are very, very similar. The 16-8 essentially means that you break your day up into a 16-hour fasting window with an 8-hour eating window. Many celebrities have made the 16-8 popular. You got Hugh Jackman, Terry Crews, Nicole Kidman, even Beyonce has tried it. It's what I started with, and really it is one of the simplest things to incorporate, and most people can do it. Then we have the 2-meal day, which is exactly how it sounds. Instead of eating 3 meals a day and snacks, you're focusing on dropping 1 meal and eating just 2 meals. And by dropping let's say breakfast, for example, most people do choose not to eat first thing in the morning. You are thereby automatically getting roughly a 16-hour fasting with an 8-hour eating window. On face value, the 16-8 and the 2-meal day are very similar, but actually there is a very small but incredibly powerful difference. And this difference is the reason why I believe that the 2-meal day can become a way of life, something that you can do forever, a flexible approach to long-term fat loss, rather than just another short-term fad diet, which the 16-8 does seem to become for many, many people. Before I get into it, let me know in the chat, what type of intermittent fasting have you tried? Have you tried a few? How long did you do it for? What success did you have? I'm really interested to hear how you've been getting on. So the reason that I think that the 16-8 does not become a way of life, and remember, I know this not just from myself, but from working with hundreds of people one-on-one over a 10-year career. And that is because the 16-8 is focused on the clock, right? What happens is you tell yourself you're not going to eat for 16 hours. You can start eating at 2 o'clock or whatever it is. Essentially, you eat because the clock tells you to. And this creates problems for a number of reasons. And really, the main reason is that, for me, intermittent fasting is a great way to teach yourself to eat intuitively. And I mean real intuitive eating. I don't mean eating a donut because you want a donut. I'll go into this in more detail in another video. But when you are focused on the clock, you're not listening to your body. You're eating because the clock tells you to, and therefore you're not getting one massive benefit of being able to eat when you're hungry, which is what I have done for the last 10 years. Just counting down the hours and eating because the clock tells you to will mean that you don't really learn the difference between real hunger and perceived hunger. Perceived hunger is something that occurs regularly throughout the day, every 2 hours. It's often triggered by emotion, boredom, routine, habit, stress.
I'm hungry.
All these things don't actually warrant eating. Whereas real hunger is something that occurs every 12 to 24 hours. And if you think about the modern Western lifestyle where you eat regularly until right before bed, snacking until 10, 11 o'clock, wake up at 7, 8 o'clock, and you're eating straight away. You're getting 7, 8 hours without eating. You're never really getting to experience real hunger. And getting to experience real hunger is incredibly important because then you can actually learn the difference between perceived hunger and real hunger. So whereas with the 2-meal day, when you drop a meal, you eat your first meal when you feel real hunger. That could be after 13 or 14 hours, or it could be 18, 19, 20 hours. It very much depends on a few variables, like how much did you eat the day before? How active were you the day before? How good was your night's sleep? And being able to understand when you should eat and when you shouldn't eat is essential for long-term fat loss and long-term control over appetite and calorie intake. So like I mentioned earlier, I've been intermittent fasting. I've been incorporating the 2-meal day for 10 years. Most of the time I break my fast around 1 o'clock and I finish eating, or I try to finish eating around 8, 8:30. However, if I'm training for something specific, like I recently ran the Brighton Marathon, then I'm a lot more flexible with this approach. The 2-meal day allows a lot more flexibility, whereas the 16-8 is very rigid. Anything that is rigid is never going to become a way of life, because ultimately your life is always changing. There's lots of variables. And the people that get long-term success with fitness and fat loss are the ones that are able to incorporate flexibility into their approach. The 2-meal day allows you to be flexible in your approach to intermittent fasting. So what are the main benefits of the 2-meal day? Obviously, the big reason that most people get into intermittent fasting is because of weight loss, and the 2-meal day is an incredibly effective weight loss tool. The reason for that is not because it's some kind of magic potion, magic formula that automatically means you're going to lose weight. It's because basically it makes eating in a calorie deficit much, much easier. And a calorie deficit is essential for fat loss. How does it make eating in a calorie deficit easier? Well, obviously, if you're going to drop one meal and only eat 2 meals, you're making it more difficult to consume more calories. But the caveat with that is that you're eating in a calorie deficit, but you're eating 2 large, satisfying meals. What other diet or way of eating, which is focused on fat loss, allows you to eat large, satisfying meals and feel full at the end? There aren't many, and this is, again, one of many reasons why I think the 2-meal day is an effective long-term fat loss strategy. But again, I want to stress, you get the fat loss benefits because of a calorie deficit. It is still possible to be in a calorie surplus and only eat 2 meals. If you're in a calorie surplus, you won't lose weight, and if anything, you'll put on weight in the long term. People also report having more stable energy levels. This happens for a variety of reasons. Number one, digestion actually takes up energy. Everyone knows what it feels like when you eat a big meal, you feel tired afterwards. On top of the fact, when you're not consuming food regularly throughout the day, your blood sugar levels will be more stable. So it's going to be less of a roller coaster where you eat something, you have energy, blood sugar levels drop, you don't have energy, you have to eat something again to top up the energy levels. Not only that, it improves metabolic flexibility, which basically means that you're able to effortlessly shift between different fuel sources within the body. The primary fuel source is going to be glucose, sugar, from the food that you eat. But once you are metabolically flexible, you're going to be able to tap into stored body fat. And that's exactly what fat is there for. It's stored energy. And in fact, I worked out that with my kind of 9% body fat, I have roughly 40,000 calories worth of energy to tap into. And intermittent fasting, the 2-meal day, retrains your body to tap into that stored energy. The reason I use retrain, most people have lost the ability to do this. And really the reason we have got to this stage in evolution is because of this capacity to store energy and tap into it when times of harsh food environments happened. It's 12 in the afternoon. I am fasted right now. I wouldn't dream of eating before recording a video like this, because really, when I'm in a fasted state, I have an insane level of mental clarity. And this is one of many reasons why intermittent fasting has become so popular, is a massive increase in energy levels. Of course, again, this is not a magic pill. If you sleep on average 5 or 6 hours a night, all the amount of fasting is not going to counteract that. Sleep is the most important thing. But if you've got good sleep, if you've got eating proper food and you incorporate intermittent fasting, you will feel a big benefit. The third big reason why people get into intermittent fasting, the 2 meal day, is because it reduces your hunger, your overall hunger. You begin to understand the difference between real hunger and perceived hunger. And one of the most empowering things about intermittent fasting is you realize that just because your stomach is empty doesn't mean that you're hungry. Like I said, my stomach is empty now, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm hungry. And this can be a really difficult thing to get into your head when you first start intermittent fasting. It can be uncomfortable, and people can be scared to have an empty stomach. Just look at, short flights, Ryanair, EasyJet, whatever it is, you've got an hour flight and the snack cart is going around.
Snacks, beverages, snacks.
But once you start intermittent fasting, you begin to understand the difference. You realize that actually you can function optimally without food. And because you are more metabolically flexible, you're less dependent on a constant influx of sugar from food to fuel you. You can tap into those stored body fat, then you feel less hungry. There also seems to be an impact on leptin and ghrelin levels. Ghrelin is a hunger hormone. It makes you feel more hungry. Ghrelin levels reduce when you incorporate intermittent fasting. And leptin makes you feel full, and you become more leptin sensitive, which basically means you feel fuller for longer. And actually, people who are incredibly overweight are often leptin resistant, which basically just means they're hungry all the time. Compared to all the other intermittent fasting methods, it's flexible. Like I said earlier, it has an element of flexibility in its approach, whereas things like the 16-2, 5-2 alternate day fasting, it's very, very rigid. And anything that is rigid is going to create problems in the long term. You'll be able to do it in the short term when willpower and motivation is high, but ultimately you do not want to depend on willpower and motivation for long-term fat loss. It's also sociable as well. One of the biggest mistakes that I see people make with intermittent fasting is they allow it to become antisocial. Let's say that you're incorporating the 16-8 and you decide you're not going to eat past 8 o'clock, but your friends invite you out for dinner. Lots of people, and I am afraid to say that I have actually made this mistake in the past, either don't go to dinner because of their fasting, or they go to dinner and they don't eat. All right? If you're doing that, you're doing it wrong. And the 2 meal day, because it's not focused on the clock, allows you to have that element of flexibility so you can be more social and live life to the full. Because ultimately, if you're not enjoying food, if you're not being social with food, then you're not enjoying life. But the 2 meal day is also backed by science, and Dr. Adam Collins, Professor of Nutrition and Head of Nutrition at Surrey University. We made a video that went into a lot of detail about the very specific health benefits, so click that link below, or it might be somewhere here. I haven't worked out how to do that yet. But some of the health benefits we discussed in that video are improved blood pressure, improved insulin sensitivity, and improved metabolic flexibility. So who should try the 2 meal day? Almost everyone. It really is a safe and effective way to get the benefits of intermittent fasting. I do have a very specific step-by-step system which will help ease you into the process of intermittent fasting and make it become a way of life rather than a short-term fad diet. If you would like to learn how to do that, check out my 30-day reset, click that button below. We've had people losing 5 to 7 kilograms in 30 days without calorie counting and still eating the foods that they enjoy, eating large, satisfying meals. Check that out. So who shouldn't try it? Pregnant and breastfeeding women should definitely avoid all forms of intermittent fasting. Anyone with a history of eating disorders needs to be incredibly careful with it and not abuse the process. And really anyone that has been stuck in the diet cycle, has been jumping from one diet to the next for many, many years, the 2 meal day and intermittent fasting may not help you get out of what I call that dieter's mindset. I want to stress here, although I think the 2 meal day could benefit almost everyone, I've been doing it for 10 years and many of my clients have been doing it for a very long time, it is not a magic pill for fat loss. It works because of a calorie deficit, and there are lots of other ways of achieving a calorie deficit. However, I do believe that intermittent fasting and the 2 meal day helps you achieve a calorie deficit effortlessly, and you get stable energy levels and reduced hunger. This doesn't happen with lots of different diets. So there you go. Hopefully you know everything that you need to know about intermittent fasting and the 2 meal day. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to leave a comment below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you've enjoyed this video, hit like, or if you haven't, hit dislike. Please be honest and let me know how I can improve. If you want to learn more about sustainable long-term fat loss and what to do about it, then hit subscribe because I'm going to be releasing a lot more videos.